my name is Ralph Trecarton. I am the Dean of the School of Business at Andrews University. Today, businesses and professionals are struggling to make wise decisions during this time of worldwide crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Some people call this the coronavirus pandemic. In the following short presentations, we would like several of our professors to share with you some ideas for surviving this disruption and for planning for a strong future. We are hoping that the robust economy in Vietnam is not damaged for too long or too badly as a result of this situation. The ideas shared are not meant to be exhaustive answers to questions, but just a starting point for your planning. All businesses should be carefully planning so as to position themselves for outstanding success in a variety of market conditions. Here in the United States, where our main university campus is located, in the state of Michigan, we are very close to a state of lockdown. The governor of our state has closed all of the schools, and students are all finishing up their studies through online delivery of education. All non-essential employees have been told to stay home. A number of employees have had their employment hours reduced or have been put on temporary leave without pay. The government has promised to fill in the gap with unemployment compensation. Most of the small and medium-sized businesses have been required to close down. Of course, this raises many questions for the owners and employees of these businesses. We hope to give you some ideas of things your business can do during the crisis and how to prepare the business for the business environment as we come out of this situation. It is my sincere hope that someday I will be able to meet you in Vietnam or in the United States. We are very pleased with the quality of our Vietnamese students that have graduated with our Andrews University MBA degree or with our BBA degrees, Bachelor of Business Administration degrees. For now, we hope you enjoy the following presentation. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Liz Muhlenbeck. I'm Associate Professor of Management and Advent Health Endowed Chair in the School of Business Administration. So I've been asked to talk to you about the topic of change and business change, really. And as I think about this topic and over my career, I've been involved in a lot of changes. As an executive, as a manager, as a consultant, as an executive coach, I have helped many organizations, many departments, many individuals go through some type of a change initiative. And from my experience, I have discovered that there are three absolutes to change. So the first one is that change is constant. There's no escaping it. And the second is change is necessary. And the third one is that any change decision has a consequence. It could be a positive consequence or a negative consequence. It doesn't matter. There's going to be some output or some effect of being involved in some type of change decision. So in business, change occurs typically internally and externally. And in business, change, when we consider change, we consider them within two contexts and two environments. One is the task environment and one is the general environment. And I've kind of started modeling some things up here for you. And so when all organizations, and I define an organization as two or more people coming together for a common purpose. So think about some of the organizations you're a part of that aren't necessarily traditional companies, right? So you have organizations like your family or a class or a team or an association that you're a part of. So these are all two people coming together, two or more people coming together for a common purpose. So there's a lot of environmental forces that are affecting change or requiring change for these organizations. So first we have our task environment, and the task environment is typically those entities that your organization directly touches. So for example, this could be your customers, your suppliers, your distributors, and you can have some impact on or control over some of the changes that happen within that task environment. And then the next environment is the general environment. And this would be those areas like your economic environment, your socio-political environment, your legal environment, the technological forces that are impacting what's happening within your general environment. And these are typically areas that you can't control. And so when organizations are in a time like right now, there's a lot of stuff happening in the general environment that is kind of encroaching in on how other organizations are impacting and interacting with one another, which then comes in even more to the organizational level, and how do we respond to those changes. And so when we consider change management, one of the theories that we look to is Lewin's change model. And I like this model. It's fairly simple. And so I thought we'd just kind of take a run through. And in Lewin's model, it says that, first of all, you have to capture the moment in time. You have to identify where you are right now before you actually make a change and what's happening there. And so he labels this as the norm. We freeze the context, that is the norm. All right, and then we can move forward to the specific change we want to make. And then once we do that, then we create and we refreeze the context, and that becomes our new norm. So when I consider this model, there's actually quite a bit of research that has occurred in the organizational behavior and the management fields that talk about change and the impacts to change and why people and how people deal with change. And when I look at this model, I'm kind of captivated by something that I see here. And that is these spaces here, the space in between. That's what I'm going to call them, the space in between. And what I find is that there's a lot of stuff that happens in the space in between. A lot of uncertainty occurs here. This is a very ambiguous space. And so we find that there is a lot of unknowns in this space. And I just kind of want us to pause for just a minute. And I want you to think about what people's reactions typically are to not knowing, to this ambiguous space. How do people react to the space in between? Well, behavioral studies tell us that a lot of people don't like change, right? In fact, only 1 in 3 like change. So what about those of us, and I'll put myself in that area that don't really like change. There are some changes that we do like. So the two of us who are having change issues, there are some changes that we do well with. All right, so we do well with changes in the seasons. We change our toothpaste, or we change our underwear, we change our hairstyle. Those are changes that we can control. And a lot of times that we do well with controlled change. But when we're talking about change, like major changes that we're experiencing right now, we're dealing with those changes kind of out here in this external environment, those things that we can't change. And so when we're looking at change initiatives and the spaces in between, there are some attitudes that commonly come forward. And so did you think of some? I thought of some, and I'm going to write some of them down here and list them out. For those of us who don't handle change well, perhaps there's a reaction of fear. We may have a high level of anxiety and stress. When there's change going on, there may be some confusion. Why are we doing this? How are we going to do that? So confusion can derail what we're doing. There may be blame. All right, they're forcing me to change. Oftentimes, another reaction to change may be vulnerability. If we change, it may show that I have a weakness. If we change, it may show that I may not know what's going on, or I may not have a competency in that area. So whenever change is occurring, it really exposes our vulnerability. We could react to change as being distrustful. So if we don't have a lot of information about why we're making change, we may not trust the change is going to be good. I put down here loss. You know, whenever we are involved in a process or a system, we actually invest a little piece of ourself in it. And so if that's going to change and go away, you know, we may feel that, you know, we're losing something along the way. We also may feel that a sense of failure. You know, if I've tried to do something and it doesn't work, then I must not be very good at that. And so we might have some failure issues. And some people will actually react with sabotage to make sure that the change doesn't happen at all. But what about those people who do handle change well? If you're familiar with Lewin's, or not Lewin, but the Big Five personality assessment, if you are high on extroversion, conscientiousness, and openness, you may be one of those people who really embrace change. And for you, this list looks very different. In fact, if you are one of those people, you may look at change very optimistically. You may have a sense of anticipation, like what could we discover if we make this change? You may be very curious. You may also feel some ownership. Yay, we're going to do something. I'm going to get to do something new. You're going to take ownership of that process and move it forward. And through all this, you may enjoy the learning. What can you learn from going through the change initiative? And with change comes opportunity. I have a saying, problems are opportunities to do the extraordinary. So what are you going to learn? What's going to happen? What opportunity can you achieve through this? So there are some companies that do very well with change. And this may explain one of the reasons why some companies thrive and some companies dive when there is a high degree of uncertainty in the marketplace. And this comes down to culture. Cameron and Quinn describe 4 organizational types, and only one of those types does well with change. It's called the adhocracy. Now, Warren Bennis, who is an organizational behavior theorist, probably one of the best in the 20th century, coined this term adhocracy. And he describes an organization like this to be one that is very flexible and adaptable, one that is very organic in their structure, very innovative, very creative, and when they see an opportunity, they can pursue it, and that is kind of their trophy, so to speak, is how well that they can take on new opportunities and do really well. But it's only one framework out of the 4, so not very many companies are set up to manage change, certainly unplanned change, very well. And here's kind of an ironic thing when we consider management and the business of change, is that managers and the whole area of management is not designed to handle change well. In fact, management is designed to maintain stability. We don't like change. We don't like to see a lot of change. So we put in a lot of organizational controls, and the goal is to remove as much ambiguity from the process, from the environment as we possibly can. And so the end goal is always for efficiency and productivity. So managers are really good at planned change, but they're not really good at managing unplanned change that comes from major changes in the work environment or the general and task environment. They're not well equipped for handling ambiguity. So where does that leave us right now? So right now, companies, what are companies doing right now in the space in between? All right, so they're taking two approaches. Some companies are panicking and losing sight of their focus. But the most successful companies are those that have leaders who have developed the discipline of being okay with not knowing what's happening in the space in between. In fact, their role is to be able to navigate that ambiguity for their organizations. And they're consistently keeping a pulse on what's happening out here in the general environment so that they can make better decisions for their organizations. So what are smart companies doing right now? All right, so I've listed out a couple of things, and then we'll make a practical application to this and see how we can make some corollaries for you. All right, so what are companies doing in the space in between right now? First of all, they're staying focused on the end goal. All right, they're not married to one way of doing things. They're keeping very flexible and adaptable, but they're always keeping that end goal out front. They know where they need to go. Companies that are panicking right now are losing sight of that goal, and they're just dealing with the minutia that is keeping them afloat day to day, and that's not going to be very effective for them. All right, stay focused on what's coming ahead. Keep moving forward. The next thing that they do is they are shoring up. They're looking at what they have and they're deciding, what can we do? All right, there's so much happening. They cannot control a pandemic. They cannot control a drop in the stock market, right? These things, but what can they do? So this is what they're doing. They're shoring up. Shoring up means they're looking at their key business systems and they're focusing on those specific systems that keep them in tuned to their competitive advantage. Everything else, they're just putting those aside right now and not dealing with them. They're getting rid of the dead weight. So the dead weight are these inefficient processes and systems that aren't serving their key business systems, but it also is looking at people. So companies that are panicking right now are doing major layoffs and they're getting rid of people. But smart companies are saying, that's not what we need to do. We need to get rid of only the lower 1% of our personnel who are not contributing as they should be to the overall purpose of the organization. Those are the ones that we're going to do away with. Now, this is consistent with the research done by Jeffrey Pfeffer, a Stanford researcher, who says that, reminds us that all businesses ebb and flow. And if you get rid of a lot of your people, when business comes back and starts flowing again, you're going to need to hire those people back. But you're not going to be able to find them because they're now working for your competitors. Instead, what you need to do is item number 3 here, and that is to redeploy your resources. So we find Amazon doing this. We're finding Walmart's doing this. A lot of companies are doing this. They are keeping track of their key business systems. They're redeploying their personnel and their resources in order to keep things going. So a company would, like, instead of laying off people, they would redeploy them. So they would have their production people who are really, really knowledgeable about processes and systems in the product. They would have them working with the sales department. They'd be having them working with customer service. They may send them out to their actual customers and help their customers problem solve. Or maybe they have them working on quality action teams and looking at processes and systems and how do we improve, so that when business does pick up, then they go back to what they were doing before, but their corporate intelligence has been preserved and they're actually functioning at a higher level than they were before. The next thing that companies are doing is they're planning. They're doing a lot of planning right now. I can tell you with 100 degree of certainty, there are tons of Zoom meetings happening right now all over corporate America. And they are looking to understand what is going to be the new norm. Has this pandemic disrupted us so much that business will not be as usual when we all come back again? So what they're doing is they're trying to understand what the new norm is, and they're looking for new opportunities. They're looking to innovate. This is a high time for innovation. And they're looking to acquire, because remember those companies that were panicking? well, they're going in the brink, and so now they're ripe for being acquired. And so companies who are smart are looking for things like that. They're also looking at acquiring new technology, new processes, new systems, new way of doing business. This is a very, very busy time for corporations. And I don't think it's any different for what we should be doing personally during this space in between. One of my favorite biblical characters is Joseph. And I think Joseph was a master at looking and using the space in between. Specifically, one area I'd like to look at is how he used the space in between when he went from Potiphar's house to Pharaoh's house, right? He was thrown in prison during that time. Did he sit in prison and did he mope and did he whine? Did he blame? Was he fearful? No, none of that. I think he did a personal self-inventory, and he got to business, right? And he did a lot of these things. He stayed focused. He knew God had a plan and purpose for him, and he was going to maximize that. He was going to figure that out and stay focused. He was going to determine what could he do and do it. So he had these great skills, these managerial skills, and he kept working on them. He did so much that within the time, that space in between, he went from being a prisoner to being number 2 in command. Essentially the warden, the assistant warden of the prison. So by the time he did get to Pharaoh's house, he was prepared. He had developed his skill sets. So I think that there are some things that we could consider too here, and where you are personally. There are some ambiguous spaces that you might be facing right now. One of them may be a career. Maybe you're getting ready to change from being a student to an employee. What are you doing with that space in between? Maybe you have changes that you need to make in a relationship. Maybe you're single and want to get married. Maybe you're in a relationship that you need to get out of. So what are you going to do with that space in between? And, another one I can think of is health. Going from illness to wellness or wellness to illness. What is happening in that space in between? So I can help us think about some strategies about managing the space in between. And one of them is to establish a prayer plan. And this is really important. First of all, when we think about what's happening around us, we can't control any of that. So pray that God will help you release the anxiety that comes with that. Give to God, release to God the things that you cannot control. But then also ask for wisdom for God to help you to manage the things that you can control. And claim those promises for your future. He has a plan and purpose for you. He's given you a future and a hope. He knew you before the foundation of the world. Claim those things that can help you move forward. So I want to leave you today with a question. What are you going to do with the space in between? Right? Are you going to be like the children of Israel who wandered and whined and complained and were distressful and worrisome? And overall, they never really became the people that God really wanted them to be. Or are you going to use the space in between wisely, like Joseph, so that when things get back to a new norm, that you will be able to emerge on the other side, ready and equipped to serve your purpose. Right. So I want to wish you all a good day, and hope that you are staying safe, happy, and optimistic, and just want to wish you many blessings. So have a great day. Bye.